Thailand, the government can no longer use force against demonstrators trying to oust the prime minister. That's the ruling from a Thai court. It came a day after violent clashes between riot police and protesters, which left 5 people dead, dozens others injured. CCTV's Tony Cheng joins us live from Bangkok with the latest.
Thanks very much. Yes, a very strange decision yesterday by a civil court in reaction to a petition placed by one of the petitioners, one of the anti-government protesters themselves, challenging the state of emergency that's currently in place in Thailand. The ruling stating that the police cannot use force or arms, they can't disperse the protesters, they can't move the blockades the protesters have put up on the streets, of basically neutering them in any powers to try and act against the protesters who've basically been shutting down Bangkok for the last couple of months. And that's going to be a very big problem. We saw the head of those emergency powers come out earlier this morning and say that he's not very concerned about that, but it's going to limit the powers he has at his disposal considerably. Particularly strange in this decision is the fact that the court ruled that these were peaceful demonstrations. Well, we've seen throughout the shutting down of the election, the shutting down of Bangkok, violent clashes which illustrated that the protesters are not peaceful, that they do have arms. We saw that very explicitly on Monday in the clash as the police tried to move them away from the area around Government House. We saw the police come under attack, one policeman killed in a hand grenade attack, several other people on both sides injured in shootings. So I think it's going to be very problematic, and it illustrates the problems the government are up against, and the courts pretty much are not on their side.
Well, and you're talking about the government, Tony. What about the prime minister and the possible impeachment vote regarding the prime minister?
Well, it's a very difficult time for her. Obviously, she's going to have to deal with this court ruling, but I think looming large on the horizon is a decision by the Anti-Corruption Commission looking at a rice pledging scheme, which has caused a lot of controversy over the last couple of years. They say they've investigated her on corruption charges. They say they now have enough information and evidence to go forward with an impeachment, but their final decision will be released on the 27th next week on Thursday. So that's going to be very problematic for her, and we suspect could lead to her being disbarred from politics if the Anti-Corruption Commission find there is evidence of her involvement. And I think it's just an illustration of what's happening here. Many people, when these protests started up, suspected there would be a military coup. We've seen the military backing off, but what appears to be happening is instead the slow strangulation of this government with a series of judicial decisions which are limiting their powers and slowly eliminating the leadership from control.
Well, let me ask you about those court rulings. You're talking about a strangulation through that. Is this emboldening the protesters more? Or are they likely to back down at any point? Or will this just give them more fuel, you think?
The protesters themselves are not backing down. In terms of numbers, we've seen the numbers drop considerably in the last couple of months. These protests started with very much a mass movement in opposition to an amnesty bill the government had proposed. It would have seen exiled Prime Minister Shinawatra return to Thailand. There were hundreds of thousands of people on the streets. Now there are a handful, a couple of thousands at most of the rally sites. We do assume they still have popular support, certainly in the south of Thailand and in the capital, Bangkok. But the hardcore are clearly very committed to continuing to defend their protest sites in downtown Bangkok. They now have the judicial backing to do it. But I think the greater problem for the government is the institutions of the establishment which are working against them, namely the judiciary, which are part of that slow strangulation. And much as they seem to be working according to the law, when the law is against them, they've got very little chance of survival.
Tony Cheng, live for us in Bangkok. Thank you.